The French president arrived in Burkina Faso's capital Ouagadougou late on Monday night. He was warmly greeted by President Roch-Marc Christian Caboret. Emmanuel Macron says he's come to Africa to start a new chapter in French-African relations, one built on equality rather than former colonial ties.
I wanted to make Ouagadougou the first stop on my Africa trip. It's also a symbol to mark a new era of relations, not just with your country, Mr. President, but with the whole continent.
Macron has condemned France's colonial past. He says he wants to end 60 years of French influence over its former colonies, where self-interest was the guiding principle. Former President Jacques Chirac embodied the neo-colonial approach that became known as France-Afrique. Nicolas Sarkozy had little time for Africa. In a controversial speech in Dakar, he said Africans had failed to enter the history books. It was under François Hollande that the Sahel region became a new frontier in what he called France's fight against terror.
France has no desire to remain here in Mali, because it must be the Malayans themselves and Africans who ensure the security, the independence, and the sovereignty of Mali. That's how I understand relations between France and Africa.
When it comes to Africa, Macron has had some false starts. He was criticised for saying Africa was being held back by women having too many children and for a plan to place French immigration processing centres in some African countries.
Like every new president, Macron says he'll end the old French-Africa networks of favours, but in the end, most presidents end up keeping the status quo, and they're criticised for that.
Emmanuel Macron has chosen to start his 4-day trip to West Africa with a speech to students at Ouagadougou University. He says it's young Africans who carry the hopes of tomorrow. And as France's youngest president, he may just be the one to convince them that he means what he says. Natacha, Butler, Jazeera, Ouagadougou.